Truth Bombers Podcast.
Truth Bombers Podcast.
The group chat turned podcast with your hosts, Russ, Lockie, and BJ.
At the end of the podcast, boys, thank you so much for joining me for take two, version 2 of episode 17 of the Truth Bombers Podcast, the group chat gone podcast. My apologies to everyone listening, everyone watching. We finally got all the boys back in the panel for the first time, back in the studio in probably 3 or 4 weeks. Recorded what was an absolute cracker of an episode. It had new segments from Russ, updates on the footy tip, some big
best ever rap, hilarious jokes, great analysis.
The banter was incredible. And then as I went to do a bit of editing and get up on YouTube, plenty of video, but zero audio. So actually that reminds me, we now have the old fail safe, which we're going to do from now on. And I'm actually going to record the episodes on my phone at the same time, should that ever happen again. But this is all part of the learnings that come with starting a new venture project, and better to happen now than when we're fully sponsored, got all the good setup and paying for some space. So thanks, boys. I appreciate your time once again. How are we, Russ?
I'm good. I'm a bit flat. I thought it was a good pod. I really, when you told me last night, I was pretty flat about that. So, yeah, it was good.
I guess
but we'll try and make up for it today.
Part of the hilarious banter was really checking in on you and your MIA post the Fremantle game, where you disappeared for 72 hours and were indeed once again admitted to hospital. So, lucky touch wood, if bad things happen in threes, we've all done a hospital visit, mate. You're the only one left that hasn't made the venture in. So,
Nah, I don't believe in that stuff, Benny. I'll be fine.
Well, mate,
you don't believe in hospitals?
Hoodoos, I think, mate. Confirm, Lucky? Yeah, believe in hospitals, believe in science.
I believe in hospitals, yes.
All right, lovely, boys. So let's get straight to it. We are obviously here to preview the ANZAC Day game once again, coming up on Monday against the Pies. Got the team sheet in front of me. Now, we did sit down on Thursday and read this through. Obviously, we were all pretty taken aback with what was a very extended bench once again, which is becoming the norm for the Essendon Football Club, and some very surprise inclusions given the statements that were coming out from the high performance team in terms of where
low performance team.
In our low performance team. We'll get back to that banter once again, Russ. So let's go through it. Let's start. We'll kind of go through line by line. We can have a little bit of a chat. Starting at fullback, BZT, who, as we said, is probably played his best game for the club last week. Not necessarily a great game by AFL standards in terms of elite defenders, but definitely BZT's best game that he's played. A game that was probably up to the standard that we'd want to see him at.
Really? That's a standard you want to see him at?
Well, he's moving in the direction of where we want to see him.
All right, he did the bare minimum to keep a spot at an AFL level. I don't want to go on a limb and say that's where the standard is for him.
The bare minimum was more than any other player on the field, just about.
With 2 tackles, he led the charge from the back 6, mate. So then our boy Jaden Laverde there at fullback, in still the absence again of James Stewart, who I think you boys actually mentioned had been moved to more of a medium-term injury list. But I noticed on, I think, Thursday night, he's actually cited as being out with a groin, not with a calf.
It was calf at the start of the week.
Yeah, definitely the only thing I've heard is calf.
Maybe some more questions there for our performance. We won't mention high or low right now, but our performance team in what's actually going on with that recovery. And then our boy Jake Kelly in the other back pocket. Our half back line, Mason Redmond, Jordan Ridley, and the vacuum, the Dyson, because he just sucks at the moment, which is the guy got plenty of leverage out on Thursday night and bringing it back. That centre midfield line on a wing, Sam Durham, who's been doing more than enough to definitely earn and keep his spot. Ben Hobbs, who had a great first game last week, I thought landed himself there, starting on the ground in the centre. And Nick Cox on the other wing. Any comments, thoughts, banter there, boys?
Well, I did mention this in the initial version 1. But it's good to see those young kids in and get given game after game. I do want to see Cox lift his game. I think Durham and I think Hobbs after his game 1 definitely deserve to be in the side. They've been doing enough. I'd love to see Cox really have a standout game versus the Pies.
Yeah. Russ, anything to add there? Agree with all of the above?
It's hard to get excited about that back line, to be honest. Other than the Ridley and Laverde, I know Red Dog's been sort of putting in some big efforts. I just think we're just too short. There's just not enough experience there to take on big teams, and I'm a bit worried that we're going to see a similar effort from last week, where especially where Collingwood moves their midfield in straight down that fast defending, straight down the guts, right into the forward line. I don't think those guys can take on multiple. I think we spoke about on Thursday in great depth that the back six, the front six that Collingwood have is every single one of those guys can kick 2-3 goals, and I don't think we have enough spread to cover the full forward line.
I think unlike last week, what needs to happen this week is the mids need to have a defensive mindset and come back.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's a bit harsh to look at the back six from last week and be like, not enough effort, didn't do well. I think they basically played 4 quarters completely under siege, and particularly in the second half, just had 0 chop out, 0 help, and were outnumbered 2-1 at literally every contest, right? Then again, the footage that's come out through a lot of the football media, 360, First Crack, all those kind of usual staples that we ingest and watch and enjoy. Blokes that are on pretty big coin, like Dylan Shiel and Darcy Parish and these guys that we expect to be setting stands at the clubs, just getting beaten and walking it off. No urgency, no care, no effort. So very disappointing. And when your mids don't come to play ball, you are putting your back line under some pretty serious pressure. Probably the one positive, Collingwood, don't have that humongous man monster 1 out kind of forward, right? They don't have a Tom Hawkins. So I think in terms of the way that our back six does line up against the Collingwood forward six, I think we probably stack up okay. They're definitely a fast-paced small forward, but I think that actually suits our back six more than coming up against some of those forward lines that have that big monster.
We're lucky Elliott's out. Even as an Essendon supporter, I loathe Collingwood more than anything else in the world. But Jamie Elliott, for me, I just fucking love him. And I think he's been so stiff with injuries of his whole career.
Yeah.
And I think he's fantastic. So the fact he's out is a big plus for us. There is no that big man that we need to take care of. But I'm just concerned that they have so much depth in sort of their small and mid forwards, where every single one of them can kick 5 on their day. So we need to be, our back six needs to be spot on marking. Riz taking those into set marks. We can't just sort of man up a one man. We need to make sure the whole back six is covered, which we haven't done the last 2 weeks. And I know it's because of the siege, but there's been leaks in that back. We can't let people just roam around in the centre square like we have the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. Lucky, who does Heppel go to?
I don't think there's a specific matchup for him. Look, who do they have down there? Brody Myercheck. I reckon someone like Laverde will go to him. They've got Darcy Cameron that pinch hits in the ruck but plays forward. I'd be interested to see if that's like a BZT. And then what have they got in their forward line? Guys like Bo McCreary.
The young kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's his name? Ginnivan?
Ginnivan. There's another one I can't think of his name. I don't think Heppel necessarily has a specific matchup. You'd like to see him give Ridley a chop out and get Ridley back to his form of a year or two ago where he was just intercepting everything. But that's just so dependent on what's happening up the field, whether we're able to slow their ball movement down and Ridley can read the play. Otherwise, you're just getting a bit caught out.
So speaking of a little bit further up the field, Nick Martin, again, named on that forward flank, which I think is a good spot for him for his polish, allows him to kind of take advantage of those foot skills and get on his bike both ways. Jake Stringer has been named to play at centre half forward, Jai Caldwell on the other half forward flank, Andy McGrath in the forward pocket, Peter Wright at full forward, Matt Guelph at the forward pocket, Sam Draper to Ruck, Parrish and Merritt as the other strange inclusion. So both Stringer and Merritt named on the ground, named to start. Now on Thursday, we were pretty up in arms about this. Is this a little bit of the old Kevin Sheedy, like smoke and mirrors? Are we just like throwing magnets to try to see what sticks and where it plays? Since then, a little bit of noise has come out of the club in terms of we've named them as part of the extended squad to give them every chance to try to get up. And I think both have a final fitness test today. So there'll be an official, I guess, like an updated team sheet coming out before the game, between now and before the game. So I think it was a little bit of just give these blokes every chance to make it back possible. But the day before the team sheet went in, Wednesday night, I can't remember his name, but whoever is our head of high performance, the statement was made that, Stringer and Merritt were both ahead of schedule, but still not, in the realm of selection. And then the next day to be both named, not just as part of the extended squad, but literally on the ground. A little bit of miscommunication there potentially between where half the management thinks the players are at and where the coaching staff wants the players to be at. And are we seeing Joe Danaher 2.0 with our key marquee players in terms of feeling like we're at a pinch, backs up against the wall and just trying to force these players back into the side before they're fully fit and fully ready?
Yeah, we pretty much talked about this for like 30 minutes, I think. And we kind of summed it up as that if they play, then the club is lying to us. If they're not playing, the club's lying to us too. How can you come up the day before and go, okay, these guys, they're tracking well, but, there's still medium-term injuries or short-term injuries. And then to name them a day later, it's smoke and mirrors for the club, for talking to us as members. And, it's smoke and mirrors them talking to the rest of the group. If they play this week and one of them gets injured, I'll be out the front of the hangar with a pitchfork asking for names, because it's fucking ridiculous how you can have in quotations, high performance manager saying, yeah, they're doing good, but they're still weeks away, and then getting named a day later in a squad.
Yeah. Look.
Yeah. I can't quite work out yet whether it just reeks of desperation and they think this game is the be all end all and they're just desperate to get some sort of class back in, or as you said, Russ, that there's just this big like smoke and mirrors, like, oh, we're gonna say one thing to our members, but what we actually have behind the scenes is completely different. Which, as a paying member, you don't want that sort of stuff. You want the club to be pretty honest with you and be like, okay, this players have got a test. Hopefully they'll get up. Maybe they won't. Or no, they are on the short-term injury list as they specified, and they are still a number of weeks away.
It wasn't a press release. It was on the website it was the Essendon website that did the interview. So it wasn't like SEN's going in there trying to probe for answers and they're trying to be shady about the whole thing. This was a scheduled weekly release on the Essendon the website to give members an update on how the club is running. And then a day later, it's completely different.
And as a member, I do look at the posts they do, especially the injury news, the VFL review of different players. They've got certain stats about players, like they're running over the course of a game, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're hearing one thing and then the fact is something completely different, it's like, well, why are you telling us this?
I think too, it's obviously nice for the viewers and the listeners to hear that we do our research. This is not purely an opinion piece, but there is a little bit that goes into it. But you're right. It's frustrating as a supporter and as a member to either we are being lied to, or the miscommunication between the club. You want a united front, right? And it's if the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, that is that is typical of what we're seeing on the field, and how we do everything is how we do anything. And so if we can't even get the messaging right between the upper levels of the staff, how are we supposed to get a game plan from the coach's box onto the ground? Right. We'll name the extended bench in a second. How much do you think it has to do with this being ANZAC Day? If this was last week or next week and it's, round 7, middle of May against Hawthorn, are we rushing back a Merritt less than 4 weeks after a syndesmosis injury? Are we rushing back a Jake Stringer who's been complaining of this groin soreness and hamstring issues since the preseason? Or are we, are we getting caught up in the hype with what this game means to us as it is on our calendar, how much of a pressure there is to make it a marquee spectacle game? And to be honest, there's a fair amount of like setting up our season, yes or no, and how that plays out based on the result of this game. Do you think that's coming into the decision-making with the inclusion of Stringer and Merritt?
I think so. We spoke a little bit about this on Thursday that didn't get released, and,
Get it. I fucked up the mic.
It's I listened to an interview yesterday from McGrath on Sports Day Radio or something, and it was really good. Check out Essendon Reports on YouTube. He's pretty good at like any kind of interview that's on during the week. He's always got that up there. And they fucking grilled him. Matty, Lloydie took him to like put some real harsh questions on him, and not sort of tiptoed around it. Was sort of put the hard word, like, you guys pretty much sucked for the first game. It was pathetic last game. I'm a Bombers supporter, and like put the hard grill on him, just like sort of we would if we had the balls to actually step up and interview.
We get the media pass.
Yeah, and like it wasn't just tiptoeing around it. Like I said, like what's different this week? You come out the last couple of weeks saying it's not good enough, you're going to work on it. So from what he sort of said was, we didn't just look at last week. Yeah, it was a very brutal, honest sort of what happened last week. They said that, after the first half, Fremantle didn't get any better. We got a lot worse. And they summed up not last week, but the whole first 5 weeks. So I think in the club, they know that it doesn't matter that it's ANZAC Day. It doesn't matter if it's a Collingwood game or a historical game. They know that if they don't get up this week or they don't put in those 4 quarter efforts, that's it. Their season's over. And I think they've made that pretty clear.
I think and that's the thing, I guess the other frustrating thing about being an Essendon supporter is we've been hearing from round 1, it's like, Dyson Heppel comes out and makes statements like, the boys are hurting too, and we own that. It's like that corporate wanker speech like that you get in corporate emails. Like it's just, you're just paying lip service, and it's like, I want to see it. Like you don't, like when you got blokes that are getting paid $800,000 a year plus, like Shiel, getting beaten in a contest and then just walking it off while his direct opponent like outburns him to get to the next contest, and Parrish the same. Like that's not showing me you're hurting. Like that's not showing me that you're like desperate and you're trying to make amends and trying to turn a corner. It's showing me that you don't really give a fuck, And I, like with ANZAC Day and all the feeling that goes into this round and what this game should stand for and signify, and a lot of like the terminology and metaphors that come through in terms of like fighting a war and being brave and being courageous, like you would want to fucking turn up this week, because I think if we are in a position where we're 1-5, and again, to reiterate, like, at what point do we start saying it's time for a fucking overhaul of from the top down? And it starts getting a little bit hot under the collar for guys like Rutten and Syracusa and Carousella and the strength and conditioning department and the high performance department, because something stinks. Something stinks inside the 4 walls of the hangar, and it's obvious and plain as day when we take it out onto the field. So and Locke, a point that you made on Thursday, which I really liked, you were like, the Essendon Football Club, it's the Thursday before our biggest game and we've been playing a shit season, and it's like, focused. Get the fucking cameras out of their face while they're trying to train. Bring the fucking clippers to training. Start shaving heads, shave off the mullets, shave off all the bullshit mustaches, and like bring the mouth guards, boys, because we're going to be doing some grappling and some boxing, because short of standing around slapping everyone in the face before they run out onto the field, like we need to toughen up. Like, enough of the hangar. Get rid of all the flashy cars. Take them up to Mount Macedon. Let them sleep on the floor. Roll them out that blue map that you take on your school camp, And like, it's time to harden up. We've become, soft. We've softened up.
If you don't win the hitouts, mullets off. If you don't win tackles, the mustache is off. That's your accountability on Monday when it comes to reviews.
Yeah.
I like it.
I was a big fan in preseason of Dylan Shiel growing the goatee. And it's like, I think maybe pretty boy imagery is over and it's time to fucking get to work and turn things around. And for someone who missed the last practice game because he was at a leadership camp, he obviously didn't fucking learn anything because I'm yet to see it.
Yeah.
All right. Extended bench. Nick Hind, Dylan Shiel, Alec Waterman, Archie Perkins, Nick Bryan obviously comes in for Phillips, Dev Smith, Kane Baldwin, who kicked 5, albeit 3 late in the VFL, and Tom Cutler. I want to see Shiel dropped. Like, I think some of the vision that's come out this week of where his efforts at, despite what he's done on the training track, I think it's time to start sending some messages like that. And it, like we said, it needs to come from the top. It's not like we'll do better. It's like that's unacceptable and we won't stand for it. And it doesn't matter who you are. This is the standard that we're trying to enforce. And if you don't meet the standard, you don't play in this fucking team.
I look back at Thursday when I was thinking about this, and I kind of agree with you. And now I've had a little bit of time to think about it. Well, I don't think we're in the position where we can drop someone like Dylan Shiel. We talked a lot about our depth. He needs to, step up, and he needs to have the hard word in the club and the boys to get behind him and say, hey, pick up your game. The coaches do. I don't think we can just drop someone like Dylan Shiel in the space that we're in right now. He needs to step up, but I don't think we can afford to drop him.
Completely disagree. I think we're losing games with Shiel in anyway. It's not like he's keeping us in games. His effort level's not there. If he doesn't want to put in the effort, bring in someone who's a first gamer who never thought they'd have a shot and see if that guy's willing to
I don't agree with like the fact that we've got 5 guys over 100 games playing for the squad at the moment. Locke brought this up early in the season. We kind of brushed it away, and I'm really getting pretty passionate about the fact I'm very worried about the game plays. Like, we've got 3 guys that we're actually relying on that played less than 10 games. Like, you spoke about how who debuted with 5 games? Mick Martin, how he didn't play that second game. Like, we need him. Like, we shouldn't need someone with 1 game experience. Like, get worried that he's not in our side. We've got 10 players less than under 30 games in the squad. We can't afford to lose guys that have that experience. Yes, they need to step up, but we don't have anyone else left to just put in the midfield and go, hey, do your best and try and win a game for us.
This is how I look at it. Smith, for his couple of very selfish acts over the weekend, make him sub again, which he's played that role a couple of times. Shiel, you could easily say to Shiel, last week's effort was not AFL standard, not up to your level as well. Show us what you've got this week, and if you don't, we're going to drop you. Tell him that. Like, make it very clear, like, it's just not good enough. We're going to give you 1 more chance. And I think, like, obviously guys like Parrish and all these other guys we've sort of mentioned, they're not going to be dropped. They need to show that they have heard the message. But I think if it happens again, it's like, yep, you're out. Like, you can only give them so many chances.
Yeah. The one thing that McGrath talked about in this interview I was talking about before is that they analysed a few things. And the one thing that stuck out to me was like, there was like several things we were doing as a club and individuals that wasn't AFL standard. And I was like, yeah, exactly. That stuck out so much. It's not AFL standard for you to be doing these kind of things. So I agree with you there. Like, he needs to get the talking to. Maybe in a couple of weeks' time, it keeps happening, then he gets dropped. I don't think after 1 week of vision, we drop someone like a Shiel.
I don't think it's been 1 week. I think he's been pretty consistent. Let me ask you this. If we go 1-5, are we queuing the rack, time to just bleed and get as much experience into like these young guys?
Absolutely.
So then are you prepared to drop Shiel next week if we're 1-5?
Yeah. If we're 1-5, it sucks because we're 2-6 last year. We made finals, but I think this year and last year is a bit different. But I'm pretty firm. And like, if we're 1-5, then all the kids come in. People like Stewart, he's not coming back in for the rest of the game, rest of the season. You know, you're sitting it out and Reed's coming in, and I want him to learn how to play footy. You know, Wanganeen's in for Smith. Smith's played the last game for the year, unless someone like Wanganeen gets injured. You just play all the kids and get as much game time in as possible.
I think like the issue is, and this is another Cluckers point. So Cluckers, if you want to lead from here, but you want to be careful with letting your kids just get beaten week after week after week after week, you know? And I think in terms of as well, like things like morale and their confidence, like, yeah, they're getting experience, but like getting experience in terms of getting beaten by 10 goals like every week, because we already don't have enough experience. There's minimal leadership. If you're going to pull whatever experience there is, like, I think it's a very hard line to toe. Lockie?
And it's about balance. And right now we don't have many leaders. We don't have many experienced players with our injuries out. But yeah, like you can't keep rewarding leaders or experienced players if they're not showing what the kids have to do. Like I'd rather a kid play than someone like Dylan Shiel if week after week he's not producing the results he should.
Yeah. How much, if Stringer is like borderline past this fitness test, do you name Stringer as the sub and hopefully he plays a half, or are you like running the risk that we'll let him play the first half, and if he ends up having to get subbed out, that's the risk that we take?
Stringer, I don't take any risk at all for me. He's the one player we need to win us and can win a game for us. If we look at our whole list, he's probably one of two players other than Tipper that, you know, if he can win a goal with 8 touches. Win a game with 8 touches. You know, I am not risking him for the season, at all, for even a sub.
Good point, Russ. I reckon Tipper, for me, seems like a great sub option. And obviously that's not going to happen because he hasn't been named. I wouldn't mind Stringer or Merritt as the sub if they think that there's no risk of injury. It's just a fitness thing. I think that's very different to, he's probably not 100% right. Let's just get a quarter into him. I think someone like Tipper that we know is back to not up to fitness level, but injury-wise seems to be good to go. Like that to me is the perfect sub right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Tipper would be an amazing sub because he's not coming off a string of injuries and a string of like soft tissues and niggles and stuff. We just know he's not match fit right now because he hasn't played for so long. So for him to come in as a sub, yeah, perfect. Maybe play 3/4 of a game, a half a game. You know, he could probably run out a full game. Maybe, maybe doesn't play the last quarter. So Tipper for a sub, I think would be amazing. But for me, Stringer, I don't want to risk any kind of niggle, any injury. It needs to be 110% for him to be named for me.
Tipper's an interesting one because the reports coming out of the VFL, he's not like setting the world on fire down there. There's kind of like, yeah, he's like doing his thing and maybe he's kicking his goal, but he's not impacting games. And that's like where, when you are that like, he might only get 8 touches, but we're used to having 8 touches, 5 tackles, 3 goals. Like that is turning a game. And if he's not quite there,
it smothers all those kind of things.
Yeah, it's like this smoke and mirrors. It's like, we put him in the lineup because we want Collingwood to worry about him, but like he's going to be pretty easily negated. And maybe this is that backward step year where we say, again, if we go 1 and 5, you look at blokes like Merritt and Stringer and Tipper and say, boys, the pressure's off. Do what you need to do to get yourself right. Like it's not, I should be okay. It's take as much time as you need, get yourself right. This isn't going to be the year that we take the next step like we thought it might be or we hoped it might be. So let's just like not start building for next year, but start to have a bit of a bigger picture at like the longer term.
No, is that like we spoke about at the start of the season where having that Melbourne year where they made finals premature. They took 2 years. They took a couple of backward steps, and then they got into their window, like we've always talked about. Petrarca, McDonald, they're all in those. They're in that window, and I feel like we spoke about this at the start of the season. you look at people like Archie Perkins and Cox, you're like, and Harry Jones, like, geez, in a couple of years we're going to be fucking amazing, and maybe we are just 2 years away from it.
Well, it's also fingers crossed. Sorry, Lockie. It's also fingers crossed, right? Because it's like, if we can't get this soft tissue shit under control, then these injuries that are plaguing these kids either A, become chronic and they never reach the potential that, we need them to reach and want them to reach, or B, they like Danaher hasn't missed a game since he moved to Brisbane. So then you start to think, like, how much of that is like potentially Harry Jones is thinking about, and like Perkins and Cox and these guys that we've drafted with the intent of building a team around in 4 or 5 years, trade off to other teams and become these just like absolute marquee superstars for the opposition, right? Like that's a genuine concern that I have with our high.
Well, that's great you bring it up, because those three that we picked on the draft 2 years ago, the Cox, Perkins, Reed, they're one of, I think, 4 players that haven't re-signed with their clubs going in. So everyone else has picked up players in that draft, other than 4 players have all either re-signed with their clubs or going into different clubs. We have, like, that's a big concern, that those big 3 have not re-signed with us yet.
Fuckers.
Yeah, it is a worry that those 3 haven't signed, especially because if we are going, oh, well, our window's not now, it's in 2 to 3 years, 4 years, they would be the stars that hopefully would have developed by then. The one team I sort of look at in terms of like age and inexperience right at the moment is Swans. And they had a very high finish last season. They look good again this season. They are just as young as us. They are just as inexperienced. Even Freo, we talked about, their games played, their average age, the same profile as us. And these are teams that are in the top 5 or 6 teams of the comp at the moment. So like we're sort of making excuses for our inexperience, but there's other teams in the same boat performing much better than us. Yeah.
Swans definitely, I think, as a organization, have had a lot more stability in the last 5 years than we've had, for sure.
In the last 20 years, they haven't made finals in 4 years in 20.
In terms of your importance of like that, experience side, it's like, they've got a lot of young blokes, they're bleeding, but you've also got the best forward, arguably, to ever play the game, teaching young forwards forward craft. And you've got a Kennedy in the gut that's, again, like almost a Brownlow medal. Like you've got some pretty high level in your experience. It's not just players with X amount of games and that's the experience, However, this isn't a Sydney Swans podcast. So Nick Bryan comes in. He obviously comes in for Flip, devastatingly out for 2 weeks. Please God, like, let that be it and let him back. We've got a ruck combination 1-2 that has a combined total of 25 games worth of experience. So I think in terms of a midfield that hasn't been doing much work, not winning contested ball, not winning clearance, like, they are going to have an absolute job on Grundy, because essentially Grundy is the reason we drafted Phillips, and Phillips towers him up. And
that's 2 years,
That was the first thing I thought when he sort of limped off the park against Fremantle, was like, fuck, like you almost would have wanted to put the cue in the rack the week before and make sure he's okay for Anzac Day against Grundy. Good, both agree. Lovely. We can continue to move forward.
Russ normally jumps in when I'm trying to talk, so I'm waiting for him to.
Archie Perkins, contentious point. Hobbs and Perkins playing in the same squad. Coincidence or correlation that Hobbs coming in, playing the midfield time that arguably we've seen Perkins get the first few weeks. Perko's actually had quite a good year, quite a good start to this season. Is this something that they just need to get used to playing a little bit more with each other? Perkins needs to get used to playing a little bit deeper forward as a pocket, potentially, instead of a flanker rotating through the mid? Or is this going to be an issue where it becomes Hobbs or Perkins? Start with you, Lockie.
Can we not have Perkins as like an elite small / half forward? Like, they don't have to be oh, he was a great midfielder as a kid. Like, that's what we want him for. Like, we've got lots of midfielders. We need a small half forward that's elite. And without Tipper, we don't have that.
I think I quite like Perkins and Martin as like the two forward flanks. I think the question then becomes, where do you put Caldwell, right? Where do you put, I mean, like Welfie as a pocket, like a forward pressure pocket. I love that too. That forward line for me, that kind of pressure forward, if it fires, like there's a lot of pretty good skill in and around there. I think it, arguably is the question become like, is that a role Perkins wants to play, and how much of it becomes like what you want to do and what we potentially see you doing, and how much is it like you do your Brayshaw and you kind of take your hit for the team because right now you're being squeezed out of the position potentially that you want to play.
The one thing with Brayshaw, though, is he's become an elite winger / halfback. So if that's what's best for the team, then you accept that role and you do it to the best of your ability.
I would agree, and I hope that that's the attitude that he has. So I think that we'll find out, this week. I think looking at the extended bench, I think Perkins plays. I think Hine plays. Nick Bryan plays. So then you're looking at Deb Smith, Dylan Shiel, Alec Waterman, Kane Baldwin, Tom Cutler for your fourth spot. If you had to flip a coin between Waterman and Baldwin, do you reward good form in the VFL, or do you reward the guy that's now had two back-to-back pretty decent, consistent games doing what the coaches are asking him to do at the AFL level, but not quite turning a game on his own foot?
Russ?
Waters my boy, so I don't want to see him pushed out, but I think we're a little bit short in the forward line. I don't think we can have that one just bomb kick into 2 meter. I think we need that second tall up there. And, Nick Bryan, what's his name? Bryant has had, a really good VFL start. He's had a really good season last year. He's touted as being, before he got injured, being like a top 5 pick. We obviously got him pretty cheap in a rookie draft. I think we need a second key tall up there to help 2 meter out, especially what happened last week where everyone just manned up on 2 meter and he was the only sort of real tall option up there. So for me, I'll put Brian on there.
I think last week the problem was not necessarily right. It was the Fremantle defense. It was the quality of service that was coming in. Like when Wright tears a game open, it's because the ball is kicked to space, which allows him to lead into and take a mark outstretched with those go gadget arms of his, that he's not going to get spoiled. And when we panic, we revert back to this Worsfold-esque
absolutely. It's not a kick. It's not a kick on 2 meter, not kicking a goal last week. It's the fact that he was the only tall option, and when we do that sort of Worsfold kick in, everyone in Fremantle goes, all right, they've got the bomb kick in. We know exactly where it's going. It's going to, the one tall in the forward line.
Yeah. Lockie, Baldwin or Waters? Who's locked in? Who's locked out?
I'll go Waters just because he's proved it at AFL. Baldwin, if he has another good game, I'd love to see him in.
Yeah.
And surely McGrath being named in the forward pocket is just to chuck 24 magnets on the board and we'll sort it out later.
Yeah, it's like they don't know where to put everyone to start with, so they just throw them. You're the starting 22, they'll throw them up in the board and see where everyone lands.
Do you think, is he potentially someone that might be like a soft tag or a run with like a Degoe?
Yes.
Yeah, I think he might not be not a full tag, but he's proven he can do that soft run with soft tag and shut down a player if they do get over the top of us too much.
So McGrath potentially soft tag on our boy Geordie.
Your boy, not our boy.
Not ours yet.
Lockie, and although there are some rumors beginning to circulate and float around potentially that he very may well be our boy. But as we've sort of said, I don't think that he necessarily, presents for us that one thing which we really need, which is on-field leadership, right?
Yeah.
We kind of need that Luke Hodge, that Joel Selwood, and we've even floated the potential of like Big Mummy, just to have someone on the park that comes in, throws their body and weight around, and just gets the
show some heart.
Yeah, it just has the opposition like maybe take a stutter step or a little fumble or something like that, and wondering where he is. So it'll be interesting to see how we deal with that. Obviously, when we went Tex Wanganeen and Martin, we took up both spots. That's a risk, I guess, that you make at the time. And arguably the Martin who got signed second, I think Martin gets signed second?
No, first.
First. Arguably, you make the call at the time, and the cards haven't necessarily fallen the way that we might have hoped. But unless someone goes on that injured reserve list, there's not really much that we're going to be able to do with mid-season draft.
Yeah, not much we can do. The only thing we could do is probably put who is it? What's him called? I forgot his name. Who's old mate is coming back from 4 years off in a hip injury?
Rants. Hurley.
The only thing we do is put Hurley on a long-term injury list.
Maybe. Supposedly he'll be back in about 2 weeks in the VFL, which could be interesting. Let's bring Ramanaskas back to the club to inspire the boys and tell his story about how he came back from cancer, came back to an AFL standard footballer. I know back in the 2000s when we were just such a dominant side, he was an inspirational player for us. And I've heard multiple interviews about Matthew Lloyd and other players that have just played for someone like him because of all that he had to go through and still made it back to football.
Russ is out of screen once again.
Best.
I think I would love to see, he's doing like player management or like talent management or something around Massis, isn't he?
I think so.
I could definitely see that happening. The other thing that I think we should do is get rid of our entire strength and conditioning high performance team and bring in Dean Solomon, Paul Barnard, Mark Johnson, and Adam McPhee, probably 4 of the like biggest and best shaped blokes that, enforcers that we've had at the club, and just let them like, boys, just jump in on Mark Johnson's bloody push-pull day, like
get on the man shake and just
hit the fucking heavy bag. Hit the heavy bag with Dean Solomon over the preseason. Just start to, and look, if Truck's all about like teaching the history of the club, like I'd be showing the boys the game that I think we were down by 68 points or something at halftime to the Kangaroos and came back and like start showing some of those highlights and what's required. But 37 tackles for the game yesterday. I think St Kilda had 20 tackles in their first quarter last night. So that's the one thing for me. Again, I don't necessarily mind if we lose, but like I want to have 80 tackles, pretty high contested possession, and just be like, fuck, we really gave it everything and it just wasn't our day. And to be fair, like we've had the wood over the Pies for the last, year and a half now. We won last ANZAC Day. We pretty comprehensively put them away by about 6 goals towards the end of last season. But they are a team that we know are going to come out and they're going to play hard, fast, high-pressure, finals-esque football. And if we don't show up, it's going to be a blowout in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, if we don't sit up behind the play and they go that high-pressure, fast goal transition, in the first 5 minutes, we could be easily down by 5 goals. You said we won last year pretty easily both those games. We were plus 30 in tackles for the last 2 games with Collingwood. And like you said before, we had 30 tackles total last week. Yes. So we need to come up with the pressure. I'm going to have the stats up when we watch it, Benny, and I'm going to be looking at, the tackles, and that's going to be the measure of our intensity from opening bounce.
Now, I know that this podcast is starting to get a bit of a reputation for technical difficulties, but we are going to try and go live on the old YouTube for the game on Monday. We are going to have a few people here. We're going to have maybe a potential live cross to Lockie, who's going to be at the ground. But I think, like Russ, we'll try to do, I think, some quarter time and half time, like look at some of those stats and some of those key metrics, and we're going to record the review podcast straight after. So if it's a display like what we saw against Fremantle, that'll be an episode that I'll be double and triple checking that the mic is working, because it's going to be a pretty big emotional vent, a therapeutic vent in a rant. So feel free, listeners, to join us on that one. Boys, any other thoughts coming up to the game? Any other rumors before we get into a little bit of a footy tip review?
No.
Yeah, I'm good.
Any other secret segments?
Not with half an hour's notice.
I thought you just kept them in your back pocket and you just kind of pick one out of the wallet before we get started every day.
If that's how you think I pick my segments, I'm thoroughly insulted.
We haven't had a question with minimal warning for a while, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, I got so much flack about it being too long.
All right, a little bit of an update on the footy tipping. Russ had a decent one last week. Lockie, an absolute stinker. And a little bit of an update went with GWS, the sneaky tip last night, and that has backfired heavily. Mate, you have slipped down to 15th on the
just biding my time.
Making a run late. Russ sitting pretty comfortably in 11th, and then I'm sitting now in 6th, gone up. So happy days. Brody Harrison still leading the charge, 5 ahead with 34. Locks for this week. Like, believe it or not, my lock was the Saints yesterday over GWS.
You stole my lock. I'm pretty sure that's what I had as well.
Pretty sure you didn't, but we'll never know.
Well, if you had a recording to prove me wrong, I'd love to see it.
Lock?
Let's go Port Adelaide.
Over the West Coast. And Russ, did you want to take Geelong over North? Give the wallet a week off?
Yeah, well, if you're not letting me have the Saints, I'll take Geelong.
Russ, was it you that was telling me everything in your heart was wanting you to tip Richmond over the D's this week?
Yeah, I'm pretty bullish about Richmond this week, and they've got a COVID scare going through their through the camp. I'm a little bit even more bullish about them. I reckon I'm not willing to put money on it, but
wouldn't put $20 on
if we come back on Monday, I might call it.
Lovely. And Locke, had a thought about any multis for ANZAC Day yet?
Parish 35 plus.
Wow.
Obviously won the medal last year. I reckon he'll have another day out. Draper to be suspended. I reckon he'll have a
sense for Draper.
What are the odds for him getting suspended?
I wonder, is there a market for dissents? How many dissent 50-meter?
Well, if there was, Smith would be paying about $1.05, I reckon.
And paying out.
just on that, boys, who do we think's going to give the first one away, and who do we think's going to give the most away? It surely have to be Draper, Smith, or Nick Hind to give it away.
Definitely Smith for me.
No, I think I'd say Draper.
Draper loves being pretty demonstrative, so that'll be another one that we watch. Lads, thank you so much. I appreciate giving another 45 to the podcast this week. Apologies again for the mishap on Thursday, but look forward to seeing you both back in studio Monday when we recap the game. As again, we'll be trying to go live on Monday during the game. So if you are watching from home and you want to hear a bit of banter and some carry on, we'll have the sausage rolls and the chicken meatballs out as well, ready to go.
Bring the cob loaf too.
Russ is bringing the famous cob loaf. So feel free to join us on there, and we will chat back in studio, back with the double check mics on Monday afternoon. Until then, boys, go Bombers.
Go Dons.
Thanks, guys.